This is the story of Fresh Kills, the former world's largest garbage dump, located in Staten Island, New York. What it looked and smelled like, how it affected neighboring communities, the hurtful reputation it gave Staten Island, the long and difficult battle that was waged to get it closed, and its future as a beautiful park, 3 times the size of New York's famed Central Park.
The dump had a massive impact on the people of Staten Island.
This is a dump of 2,100 acres. I mean, this is the largest dump in the world.
It's probably the biggest issue in the history of Staten Island. No question about that.
The closure of the Fresh Kills landfill was the most important event of the century for Staten Island.
Well, the first thing you'd notice is the flocks of seagulls over this mountain that was referred to not just on Staten Island, but really up and down the East Coast as Mount Trashmore.
To this day, Staten Island is still known in a lot of quarters as the home of the largest landfill in America, if not the world. And I think it really, over the past 30 or 40 years, has damaged the reputation of this community.
This landfill that was the largest operating dump in the world. So we were the home of the world's biggest dump.
And everybody makes fun of us, you know, because of Staten Island with the dump.
And it gave Staten Island such a sense of shame.
Or everyone you meet, when you say you come from Staten Island, the first reaction of the person is, oh, that's where the largest dump in the world is. That doesn't make you feel very good about the place you live.
That image affects businesses coming here. You know, it's difficult to set business up in New York to begin with, but when you have an image problem like that.
The smell was absolutely unbearable.
The smell was horrendous. I lived right around the corner, and I remember the hot, steamy nights.
And the people who lived within miles of it couldn't open their windows. They had to keep their air conditioner on for a significant portion of the year because the smells were just so bad. It smelled like your head was inside of a garbage pail.
Well, you could watch the reaction of the customers who came into the Staten Island Mall.
But people would literally run from their cars, to get into the mall.
The Staten Island Mall and other major retail complexes are located directly across the street from Fresh Kills.
To me, it was like those undersea movies when you have to leave the small submarine and go to the big submarine, and you're swimming and you're holding your breath and you're wondering, will he make it, will he make it? That's what it was like to go from your car to the mall.
Oh, the smell was horrendous. They even tried to camouflage it with pine sol or something like that.
They must have dumped God knows how many thousands of gallons of that pine scent to kind of, blunt the smell.
And then it smelled just like pine-scented garbage.
And I started reporting for New York One in 1997, and a story took me inside the garbage dump for the first time, and I shot so much video getting pelted with plastic bags. I'd be zooming in, and all of a sudden, plastic bag to the face.
Trees with garbage bags, plastic garbage bags, covered in them. Instead of leaves, it was garbage and garbage bags.
These plastic bags were all over the fence, all over the curb areas, on the trees, on the bushes, and they were flying to neighborhoods.
They would fly out of the barges and get tangled into the trees. And nobody was ever given the responsibility of getting them out of the trees.
Sanitation would be erecting what are called these garbage retention fences. So you used to see almost this prison-like atmosphere up on top. It truly looked like this was almost like a camp, this kind of whole atmosphere of enclosure and being surrounded by something that was not supposed to be in polite society.
Trucks going down the roads, they were tracking dirt from the landfill, going and coming back. The leakage from the trucks were on our roads. People would drive their cars, it would get on their tires. They would track that into their garages, into their homes. So that smell was always around. And it reminds me of, I don't know if you remember the Seinfeld episode, The Smelly Car?
Yes.
Because you had the big trucks, you had the garbage trucks, then you had the barges coming in. They were coming in from every angle.
The great Navy, the great sanitation Navy, would go afloat.
The sanitation barges, filled with garbage from other areas of New York City, would pass the north shore of Staten Island and then cruise down the Arthur Kill along the borough's west shore. Finally, the barges would enter Freshkills and dock for unloading. The process was impressive. Heavy machinery would transfer thousands of pounds of garbage from a barge to a huge truck in just minutes. The trucks would carry the garbage to one of the 4 major sections of Freshkills. Section 3-4 is in the north, Section 6-7 is in the east, Section 2-8 is in the south-central part of the property, and Section 1-9, the most massive of all the mounds, is located on the west side of Freshkills. Together, they stretch out over more than 2,000 acres. An overview of the Freshkills property would not be complete without a look at the roadways and waterways that run through and around it. The West Shore Expressway, also known as New York State Route 440, passes right through Freshkills. Richmond Avenue, a major traffic artery and shopping area on Staten Island, provides the eastern border of the property. The Arthur Kill waterway provides the western border to Section 1-9. The waterways of Freshkills, Main Creek, and Richmond Creek border the other 3 sections. Several neighborhoods also border Freshkills. One of them is Village Greens.
Well, I've been living here since 1994 in Village Greens, and Village Greens is very close to the landfill.
This is a block away from Village Green. This is a picture of Arden Avenue between Veterans Road East and West.
Until you see a photo like that, when you see this rotting garbage being dumped into your community, and it's just going to be left there to rot, it tells you what it does to the environment and the quality of your community.
This photo was taken by the Staten Island Advance on Arden Avenue in 1987. And here is what that same spot looks like today.
This is Arden Avenue, especially when you come off the crest of Arden and Arden Heights. You actually have quite a panoramic view from the top of Arden Avenue out to the landfill, and you measure it and see how high it goes. Originally, you could see out to New Jersey and see the hills, the Watchung Mountains out in New Jersey, and they got blocked, and you notice it getting higher because it blocked your view. Now it's so high that even from the top of the hill on Arden Avenue in Arden Heights, you can't really see over the mound anymore. It's so high, it is the horizon.
Well, the highest mound is in 1 and 9. Most of them are about 140, 160 feet high. 1 and 9 is probably up to around 200 feet above sea level.
And it went on for 50 years. And you know, it went on for another 40 years. Because the plan was, that mound behind you was to be 507 feet high.
So, for example, if you look ahead of us there through the trees, and as we're getting up closer, you'll see the smokestack, which is of the former Con Ed run facility. That smokestack is at about 350 feet tall. Now, imagine just behind that a hill 150 feet taller. That was supposed to be the ultimate height of Section 1 and 9 of the landfill, the last of the 4 mounds.
People say, what was the land like before they began filling it? And what the land was like was what you see out there.
Well, when I was about 13 years old and I lived in Newdorp, I can remember we'd come in, it was a little dirt path, and at the end of that was basically a swimming hole.
Well, my dad was one of those that fought against the establishment of the dump, and I recall my father vigorously fighting against it. At that time, they talked about having a dump open only for 2 or 3 years. My father said, they're not going to do that. Once they start dumping garbage there to continue and continue and continue.
Fresh Kills was supposed to be there for 5 years, and it was there for decades and generations.
Fresh Kills was never considered actually a landfill because it was never in compliance of what one would need to be a landfill. So not only did we have the insult of taking all of the city's garbage, but it was still functioning under the qualification of a dump, which was just mass garbage being dumped. No leachate control systems, no methane control, no constant monitoring.
Most landfills that are built today throughout the country are lined prior to any garbage going in. Fresh Kills in 1948, when it started, that was not a requirement.
And in 1948, when the position was taken by the state and city that perhaps we should dump garbage on Staten Island and Fresh Kills, there were no surrounding neighbors. There really wasn't anyone to bother by putting garbage in those low tidal wetlands. There was no one to complain. But after Staten Island became built up, neighborhoods started to approach the dump and built right outside the boundaries of the dump, and then it became an environmental hazard for those people.
I visit landfills around the country now as we export garbage, and most of them are in rural areas. If there's a community, the community doesn't surround the landfill like it does here in Staten Island.
And it's not only the smell of the dump. With the methane that rises, there were also some very dangerous chemicals and very dangerous compounds that could actually rise out of the dump and pollute the air of the surrounding communities.
It had become, over a period of years, a serious health hazard to the people of Staten Island.
We had all kinds of studies at the time about illnesses that people had because of their exposure.
I remember many people contacting the office almost on a weekly basis saying, my child has asthma, or my child has cancer. Is this because of the landfill?
And I don't think it was ever a coincidence that people who lived in a radius around the garbage dump seem to have higher rates of emphysema and asthma and really bad allergies.
Many people don't realize that in the 1930s there were 90 garbage dumps placed around the city of New York in the 5 boroughs.
And there were incinerators in Manhattan and Brooklyn, landfills at Fountain Avenue and Pennsylvania Avenue in Brooklyn, Edgemere in Queens, Pelham Bay in the Bronx.
All of them were closed by the early 1990s, except for Fresh Kills.
It was a 24-hour or 7-day-a-week operation at one time. We were probably taking in about 28,000 tons a day at the peak. It was a huge operation.
The rest of the city could care less. It's not my backyard. It's fine. It gave a quick and easy answer to governmental fathers of how to handle trash without stopping to think, well, when does this end? What are the environmental nightmares?
And it was just, too easy to not spend the money to ship it someplace else. So, who cares? Dump it on Staten Island. They can't do a thing about it.
One of the reasons I think that the landfill lasted so long is because Staten Island is an out-of-the-way place in a sense for the rest of the city. We're the forgotten borough, we hear so many times. Bring your garbage here. It's out of sight, out of mind. Nobody on Fifth Avenue knew where their garbage was going. They didn't care as long as it went.
They were the only borough that ended up with a landfill, and all the garbage in the city, basically all the residential garbage in the city was coming to this landfill. And I think they, and rightfully so, felt put upon it.
Guy was the borough president. I would walk into his office and to do an interview, he'd lean up and say, John, we're going to close this dump, We're going to close it. Okay, sir, I'm just setting up my camera, in 1 second I'll be interviewing you. Because, John, we're going to close this dump, and he would get so emotional about it.
People would say it's too big, it's too expensive, there's no alternative, it can't happen. And Guy Molinari would say every day, I'm going to close the garbage dump. And the more people told him he couldn't, the more he was determined that he would.
It's rare that you can identify a turning point on an issue like Fresh Kills. But in this case, it was a morning in the spring of 1995. I remember it vividly. Guy Molinari was the borough president, and he called his senior staff into his office, including myself and then Deputy Borough President Jim Molinaro. And he said, we have a window of opportunity. Staten Island has just helped elect a mayor in Rudy Giuliani and a governor in George Pataki.
And I campaigned for both of them, and we got along well. I thought, if ever we're going to be able to do something about that dump, this is the time. If we can't close it now, we're never going to close it.
Any change in those three wouldn't have happened.
Guy was extremely aggressive out there and saying, we have to do this.
So I had my staff do some research, and we looked at the Federal Clean Air Act, and I felt that that was the course to take. We're going to have to sue the mayor, principally, under the Federal Clean Air Act.
This was important enough to Guy that Guy wanted to hold people's feet to the fire, and he said, we're going to go ahead and we're going to file the lawsuit. Now, it's a very gutsy thing for the borough president to do because he was friendly with the people that we were suing. And we would bring the case in federal court because we would have a federal claim and we would have a state claim to bring. The federal claim would be a Clean Air Act case, and the state claim would be a fair share provision of the city charter case.
All the other landfills in the other boroughs had been closed. Fresh Kills was it. So we had a very potent argument about fair share.
You could close it, but then what do you do with that 15,000 tons of garbage that every day is being put there?
People would say it's too big, it's too expensive, there's no alternative, it can't happen.
When my people would come in and tell me we couldn't do something, I would tell them that we were put here to do miracles. You're all very bright. Most people that work for me were very well educated. And I used to say, if you're that damn talented, why can't we do miracles? And there's no such thing as we can't get something that has to be done. So we're just going to work at it.
We carefully and meticulously worked with them on a daily basis to show where the markets were, who was willing to take our garbage, and how much would it cost. It was the first time this had ever been done.
So it was a very intricate negotiation with several states, several governors, mayors, environmental commissioners in other states.
Eventually, all the details were worked out, and in 1996, the papers were signed to officially close the Fresh Kills garbage dump.
But there's no greater gift that we could give to the people of Staten Island than what we're giving them today. A covenant that landfill will be closed December 31st, 2001.
The press conference announcing the closure of Fresh Kills ended with a champagne toast that we'll never forget.
There's no doubt that as a Staten Islander, it has to go down as one of the happiest days in our history.
There were milestones put into the settlement papers, and the city agreed that they would dump less and less and less garbage there. And in fact, at the end of the day, the city exceeded those milestones. They actually did better than what we had agreed to do.
So instead of closing the dump on the contractually agreed upon date of December 31st, 2001, it was closed 9 months early on March 22nd, 2001.
The process of Staten Island bearing the burden of the rest of the city's garbage was inequitable, and now it's over for good.
But I don't think anything is going to go down in history as more important to the people of Staten Island and the future of Staten Island than closing this dump. That day is today. It truly is a great day. No more barges, no more garbage for the people of Staten Island.
I think it was possible that maybe even Guy, as optimistic as he was about it, couldn't believe that it was finally closing.
Jim Molinaro and myself were there, and we said, this is the official day. This is it. There's just the two of us now. And I think we went out to have something to eat afterwards and shook hands and said, you know, we did it, we did it, we did it.
Guy was elated. So he should have been elated, and he was. And he deserves the full credit for it. Guy Molinari closed that dump. It's that simple, not complicated. He closed the dump.
If you didn't have Guy Molinari, you would not have had the driving force for 15 years to get it done. In my case, he had someone that was as committed to it as he was, and we had a governor that was as committed to it as the two of us were.
An overused term, but one that is so appropriate. It was the perfect storm. Governor Pataki, Mayor Giuliani, and Guy Molinari as borough president.
For many years, we had other elected officials in office on those three levels of government that did not get the job done. Many people, including in the environmental community that hold themselves up to be the keepers of the earth, didn't care about what happened to the people on Staten Island.
Department of Environmental Conservation and all the other ones had nothing to do with closing this dump. In fact, they tolerated it, they made it exist, they made it go on with consent agreements and consent agreements and consent agreements.
So in March of 2001, the largest garbage dump in the world received its final load of garbage. But just a few months later, Fresh Kills would be forced to open again temporarily, following the tragedy of September 11th, 2001. Trucks brought in the remains of the World Trade Center site, which were carefully sorted through by volunteers from around the country. Bruno Choueiri, a police officer from Las Vegas, was one of those volunteers.
When we arrived at Fresh Kills, everything had been set up. The hangars had been erected, the conveyor belts had been put up, and basically we were directed to work with some of the existing groups there in sifting through a lot of the rubble, going through, looking for remains, looking for anything that could help identify any of the victims. It was a very heart-wrenching experience, but when we started working with our fellow officers from NYPD and the Port Authority, we began to see that what we were doing was really necessary to help bring some peace of mind to the families of the victims.
I can tell you I was never so proud to be a Staten Islander than after September 11th. Watching folks working in the dump to recover remains of loved ones, and thought, you know what? Yes, Staten Islanders are going to do this right. And that was a proud moment.
And I think that we have to do something to respect the remains of the 9/11 ashes that are there in a dignified way.
There will definitely be a memorial to September 11th because not only were the materials brought here, but also so many people were involved in the recovery effort here.
Since no more garbage was permitted to come to Fresh Kills, Staten Island's garbage was initially trucked out of the borough. But a much more efficient method was established by 2006.
The city has adopted a method of exporting it via rail and ship it out to landfills, generally in the South. Right now they're going to down the Carolinas.
After garbage is picked up from in front of homes throughout Staten Island, it is brought here to the Staten Island Waste Transfer Station, where it is packed into rail cars. Since the Waste Transfer Station opened in 2006, it has received Staten Island's waste exclusively and has proved to be an amazingly clean, efficient, and odor-free operation.
We average, I guess over the course of a year, we're averaging about 800 tons a day at the transfer station. All the material is processed inside. It goes into sealed containers by a compactor. So there's no garbage outside. You see there's no litter, there's no birds, there's no odor. It's really a state-of-the-art facility. I've taken people from all over the world here, and nobody can believe, you know, how this facility operates, how it's clean. We won the Golden Transfer Station Award from the Solid Waste Association of North America. So, you know, the word is out that this is a pretty good facility.
Once the garbage is compacted into the orange containers, they are driven a short distance into the rail yard and placed on the train. One train per day leaves the waste transfer station and makes its way off of Staten Island by crossing the Arthur Kill Lift Bridge en route to its final destination in the Carolinas.
It hooks up with other freight that goes along the coast, so it's a much more environmentally sound operation. I mean, that's the idea of the solid waste management plan.
We were probably one of the first in which we wanted to eliminate having truck traffic go through not only our borough, but in essence, off of the island also. So you can imagine that if a compact rail car can handle anywhere between, let's say, 21 to 40 tons of garbage, you're probably eliminating right there alone anywhere from, I'd say, 10 to 15 to 20 trucks just carrying garbage off of this island. Imagine the reduction in air pollution, fuel costs, tolls. This system is basic for what you need to be able to start saying we're taking responsible environmental actions for our garbage.
Also contributing to an environmentally responsible way of handling waste is the New York City Paper Recycling Program.
Well, our recycling goes to one of our neighbors right down the road, VC Pratt Paper Recycling Facility.
And what we do is we take all of Manhattan's New York City curbside paper recycling to the mill by barge from New York City. And we also receive all of Staten Island's curbside paper by truck. And I'd say about 40% of Brooklyn's curbside paper comes here also by truck. So somebody's daily newspaper, literally in Manhattan, and we've done this before, we filmed it, they'll put it in their curbside on Monday, and it gets out here Monday or Tuesday, and the next day it's a pizza box.
Despite the dump having been closed for over 10 years, some local residents have expressed fears of it opening again. But government officials are confident that laws are in place that guarantee Freshkill's future will be purely clean and green.
It was important to take that deal and embody it in legislation that makes it far more difficult, in my view, impossible, for a future mayor to welch on the deal.
It's been a long time since somebody said, are you going to reopen the landfill? Hopefully that is finally put to bed. Questions when we reopen the park.
I want to thank the mayor for keeping his commitment not to reopen the landfill during very, very difficult times after 9/11.
You can't stop in tough times. The times to make investments are the times like now. Cement is cheaper, steel is cheaper, labor is cheaper. These are the times people need jobs. What we're doing is we're making investments so that we and our children and our grandchildren will look at the city and say this is the greatest place to live.
One question that is often asked by Staten Island residents is, will this former garbage dump be safe for kids to play on? The answer may come from a look at the advanced engineering involved in the transformation process.
The Department of Sanitation has really done cutting-edge work on the engineering that's involved in managing the landfill.
And you're seeing here is actually the closure construction. You'll see the black is the geomembrane lining that's been put down. I guess a layperson would think of it as a pool cover. And underneath it, it has a venting layer for the gas. And the cover, its capping, is actually welded, heat welded together. The idea of that is not to let any methane out and not let any rainwater in. And the workers are actually installing the 2 feet of barrier protection material. It's like that very sandy material I spoke about. And on top of that, we will put another layer of dirt on top of that. Any place where people are going to be, the Parks Department was directed by the state DEC to use what we call residential grade dirt, meaning kids have to be able to play in it.
To signify the property's new identity as a park, the New York City Department of Parks and Recreation has made a slight alteration to the name by merging the two words Freshkills into one. The Freshkills transition from a garbage dump into a majestic park is being managed through a joint partnership between the New York City Department of Parks and the New York City Department of Sanitation.
But our role will basically be to maintain the facility, maintain the gas system, and maintain the leachate system.
The garbage in the giant mounds at Freshkills is continually decomposing. This decomposition process gives off gases and liquids, which can be quite harmful if allowed to escape into the air and surrounding waterways. Freshkills uses sophisticated systems of collecting and processing the gases and liquids.
This is a typical landfill gas well that is monitored. What this gas well is a high-density polyethylene gas pipe which is penetrating into the refuse, into the garbage. It's above the garbage, it's under vacuum. So right now it's extracting all of the landfill gas that may be being generated as a result of the decomposition. This is a typical gas meter that's used to measure the constituents of the landfill gas that's being generated. We're very interested in the methane concentration, the oxygen, the carbon dioxide, and the balanced gases.
He said there's 660 of these wells currently throughout Freshkills, and this is part of the system that takes the gas out and pumps it over to the processing plant where we make the high BTU and sell it to National Grid. We're going to average between $7 and $12 million a year, on the sale of the gas. We do about 25,000 homes will be heated on Staten Island with the equivalent of gas that we put into the pipeline.
After closure process began, the landfill created the world's largest leachate treatment system. It's state-of-the-art fiber optic. Now there are wires running throughout the landfill that can tell us exactly where this leachate is, exactly what's in it, and we can best manage then how to treat it. It's been a remarkable success.
But what we did was, around the entire perimeter of the landfill, we built what's called a slurry wall. Some spots it goes down 60 feet, so the leachate will come down and it'll go out, but it can't go out past the wall. And then the leachate is pumped, all of it from the entire landfill is pumped to the leachate treatment plant by Arthur Kill Road.
More confidence as to the safety of a park that was once a garbage dump can be gained by studying other parks that have already made safe, successful transformations. 3 examples are Flushing Meadows Corona Park in Queens, Richard W. DeCourt Park in the New Jersey Meadowlands, and Norman J. Levy Park in Merrick, New York. Flushing Meadows Corona Park is world famous. It was once a garbage and ash dump that underwent a spectacular transformation, with the site becoming the location of 2 World's Fairs, and is now an expansive park which each year hosts the U.S. Open Tennis Championships, watched by millions around the world.
There was a huge mound at the center of this park. It was ash and refuse, and there were horrible odors emanating out of here. This was not the beautiful park that it is today. By 1934, there was already discussions going on about having a World's Fair here. And that is ultimately the vision, to create a public park, hand it over to the public, but it was done through the mechanism of issuing bonds for a World's Fair that at the end of the World's Fair would leave a beautiful public park for New Yorkers to enjoy.
Well, Flushing Meadow Corona Park has a very important role in the lives of the local community. I mean, it's basically their backyard. Particularly in the summertime, you'll see thousands of people coming out here with their families and extended families to barbecue and use the park for a number of different varieties, from athletics to passive and active recreations. It's a great resource for the local community.
Richard W. DeCourt Park in the New Jersey Meadowlands covers 110 acres and was originally referred to as the Experimental Park on a Landfill. It was the first landfill-to-park transformation in New Jersey and one of the first in the country.
We now have over 60,000 visitors a year, 13,000 of which are school children. They come to explore, hike, photograph, bird watch. It really is quite a success story of taking a blighted landscape into an urban oasis.
DeCourt Park is located along one of the 3 major routes used by migratory birds in North America.
So although the park has been here for a couple decades, we're still picking up new species all the time. And the other great thing about being here is that we're getting nesting birds back, which we had not had for a long time.
Well, of course, people initially, this was 20 years ago, were hesitant about the concept of a park on landfill. However, since then, and through the whole process, there was a lot of environmental studies that was conducted, which eased everyone's peace of mind.
Merrick, New York is the location of the beautiful 52-acre Norman J. Levy Park and Preserve, which was converted from Long Island's former Merrick landfill. The park serves as a plant and wildlife sanctuary, as well as a tranquil place for residents to relax and exercise. The park opened to the public in 2000 and features an agricultural windmill, 2 man-made ponds, 3 miles of hiking and jogging trails, exercise stations, a kayak launch, and a 500-foot fishing pier that extends out into Merrick Bay. When Fresh Kills is transformed into a park, it will also have many attractive features, including the use of alternative forms of energy. Here, New York City Mayor Michael Bloomberg describes the widespread interest in the advanced technologies that will be employed at Fresh Kills.
Environmental and planning experts across the country will be watching and learning from the state-of-the-art land reclamation techniques and renewable energy and ecology demonstration projects that we're implementing here.
It would be poetic justice if Fresh Kills, once an environmental nightmare, became an environmental beacon by having green energy technologies in place there.
There was a test done for 14 months. Governor Pataki gave me $500,000 that I requested to run the test.
And most of that involved measuring the wind for over a year out at the site to know exactly how strong those winds are. Really, it showed that it's a very feasible idea and a very good idea to put wind energy out at Fresh Kills. This is, without question, the best site for renewable energy in the 5 boroughs.
So it's been established that it would now produce almost 6% of the requirement of electricity for Staten Island residents. would be beneficial to the city of New York because there would be no cost to the city of New York to put these windmills there.
We would envision that all construction costs would be paid for privately. So we would be the owner of the turbines. We would fund those. We would sell electricity to either the city or to Con Edison or to someone else. And so we would pay a rent or a royalty for the use of the land that we would be occupying.
Very gratified that Borough President Molinaro is sort of a visionary when it comes to looking at alternative energies. He's a guy who loves parks, but also wants to see, what can we do to meet the demands, the ever-growing demands of energy. Part of the goal of Plan YC is to reduce the carbon output of the city, and you can do that by using alternative forms of energy.
Critics of placing windmills at Freshkills have expressed doubts that the capped mounds of garbage could support the weight of the turbines. Sanitation engineer Phil Gleason points out heavy structures that have already been built on top of garbage at Freshkills and describes the proven technology behind them.
This is an example of foundation structures that can be built on the landfill and put elsewhere to support things such as wind turbines. Well, the way to do that is you're going to need a foundation. And the concern is, well, how can you put in a foundation that will support such a structure? Well, the flare pads we have over here is typical of what will you be needing even to support a wind turbine. This has been here for almost 15 years and it's been functioning fine. The piles that support this are basically steel beams that are driven through the garbage into the underlying soils. That's where they meet their resistance to support the structure.
In March of 2012, the City of New York announced that it is seeking proposals for the construction and operation of both wind energy and solar energy facilities at Freshkills. Wind and solar energy facilities are complementary. When the weather is bad and the winds blow strong, wind turbines produce abundant energy. And when the weather is good and the sun shines bright, solar panels are most effective. Another project close to Borough President James Molinaro's heart is the development of roads through Freshkills, which would help relieve traffic congestion in the area.
Here was a method of getting from Mid-Island to the West Shore Expressway to the Outer Bridge, cutting off miles and miles, cutting off tons of pollutions in the air with the automobiles, and cutting off people going through neighborhoods like Travis to get to the same location.
When we work with Borough President Molinaro, we're saying, okay, we're going to make sure that the necessary roads get built as part of this, because we know this is the fastest growing community in the state and that people need to get someplace, and we don't have a subway here.
Freshkills already has a network of roads running through it that for decades have successfully supported the travel of heavy machinery. In addition, thousands of commercial and passenger vehicles pass through Freshkills every day along Route 440, Staten Island's West Shore Expressway, which bisects the Freshkills property.
Where the Yukon Road extension is going to be is not new technology. In fact, this was used decades ago for when the West Shore Expressway was constructed, coming to the very same site.
The new roads at Freshkills will provide the missing connection between the West Shore Expressway and the island's central shopping corridor on Richmond Avenue.
Even people coming from Jersey that are coming into New Springville, they'll come right directly into the mall. They would come from Jersey. And they'll get a nice picturesque ride of a beautiful, beautiful park.
We're here at the base of the new road section going from Richmond Avenue into the heart of the landfill. And in essence, it's at this point that we see what was the purpose of constructing that new road. As you come over this mound from Richmond Avenue, you will reach a point in the heart of the landfill in which you connect to existing landfill roads. Imagine in the very near future, you get to this point, when you make a right-hand turn, you will be able to go northbound onto the West Shore Expressway. If you make a left-hand turn, you would be able to go southbound onto the West Shore Expressway. So what originally would have taken you 20-25 minutes to get from the mall to any point on the West Shore Expressway, in all reality will probably take less than 5 minutes.
We're at the Freshkills landfill, specifically at section 6 and 7, which is opposite of Richmond Avenue and the Staten Island Mall. We're at approximately elevation 80 feet. What we'd like to show you today is the roadbed that has been constructed as part of the closure construction of this landfill. The Department of Sanitation's cost of closure construction was well over $200 million for this construction. But there's major economic savings in the long term. The city decides to do the roadway. There is no requirement, no adjustments, no modifications necessary to the final cover.
Thanks to the Department of Sanitation incorporating this new roadbed into its closure construction, the cover, which seals the mounds of garbage, will not need to be disturbed when the future road surface is installed.
As you can see, we have a roadway bedding approximately between 80 to 110 feet, which will allow a 4-lane traffic from Richmond Avenue to West Shore Expressway and from West Shore back to Richmond Avenue.
With the amount of cars we have on the island, we have to get these roads in. I'll even go beyond that. I'll say they should go in even before they plan any of the active recreation.
Common sense. Let's take what was a negative for this community and let's utilize some of its infrastructure to help Staten Island.
I want roads to come through here, and here's why. I want people to start to come through the site so that they actually get a sense of the potential here.
Government themselves have to realize that no matter what they do, there's some resistance to it. So the government should always do what's in the best interest of most of the people. So you should move forward. You shouldn't be afraid of taking controversial positions. And I think that this is a lesson in that. This is a lesson in that. It's great to have a great big passive park with nothing on it at all, no roads and no windmills. But look at the collateral damage that you're doing to the community by not sitting down and saying, let's compromise.
Back on March 22, 2001, the last barge of garbage arrived at Fresh Kills. 10 years later to the day, the city celebrated that great milestone and its progress toward transforming the property into a magnificent park by bringing in another barge. However, this one was filled with trees. At the ceremony, Sanitation Commissioner John Doherty expressed his enthusiasm for what's ahead.
It's going to be a great park. We want to keep it rural, we want to keep it beautiful, we want to enjoy it, and it'll be here for all of us for a long time to come.
For Staten Islanders, Fresh Kills will usher in a new era of outdoor recreation opportunities, and it's very exciting actually to watch this park emerge.
The scale of it is incredible. Central Park, which most of us think of as huge, is about 800 acres. This is 2,200 acres with major water features coursing through it, and the opportunities are boundless.
I tell people that Fresh Kills Park is the biggest land transformation in the world, probably, certainly in an urban area. You could be up on what feels like an alpine meadow at the very top and have views 30 miles in any direction. There's no site like it anywhere in New York City. So there's so many different characters. There's woodland, there's wetland, there's meadow. There will be active sports, passive sports, hiking, running, horseback riding, mountain biking, rowing, concerts, events, picnics, dining, you name it, it'll be taking place at Fresh Kills.
Another recreational opportunity will be the multi-use path, which will accommodate pedestrians and cyclists. The 3.2-mile path will stretch primarily along Richmond Avenue on the eastern border of Fresh Kills, across the street from the Staten Island Mall and Costco.
Well, the park that's planned for Fresh Kills, in my opinion, is going to make the real estate around this dump extremely valuable. I think that once the park is in, it's like we are sitting in the 50-yard line box seats to the Yankees game or to the Giants game.
Well, the sequence of the park developments, Schmuhl Park and Playground, those will be the first projects to come online.
Well, Schmuhl Park is one of the first capital projects that we're going to be completing for Fresh Kills. It's in the Travis neighborhood on Staten Island. Actually is right on the edge of the former Fresh Kills landfill, and it will provide one of our first public access routes to Fresh Kills Park. It is a traditional playground, but it will also have 2 basketball courts, 2 handball courts, a water feature, and of course the traditional playground equipment. Schmuhl Park and Playground should be opening this summer, 2012.
Then Owl Hollow soccer fields and a beautiful comfort station will follow quickly thereafter.
Owl Hollow is one of the other capital projects that we'll be finishing first for Fresh Kills Park, and it includes 4 soccer fields, artificial turf, and a comfort station, lighting, and bleachers. We're really excited about having this particular project move forward. Soccer is very popular on Staten Island, and we're really happy to be able to bring that amenity to the public. Owl Hollow will open in 2013.
And then we'll begin the projects within the boundaries of the landfill. So the first North Park project, which will come out to this waterway, will be coming online, we hope, within the next 2 years. And then South Park will follow likely a year after.
It takes time to create it into a beautiful park. So right now you have a very open template with beautiful green spaces, but as you start adding other things, it will take time. Similar to what happened here in Flushing Meadow Park. We had basically a blank slate, which you'll have in Staten Island.
It will take many years to envision it, but that's part of the layering that goes into making parks. This park took, a good 50 years to really make it what it is today.
The New York City Parks Department conducts tours of Fresh Kills, which are free to the public.
But I would encourage any Staten Islander, when they see the potential to take a tour of that place and one of the buses that they run through it, to do it. When you get in the middle of that park, the vistas, it's breathtaking.
This entire site is engineered. It is all calculated for slope stability, erosion control, stormwater management.
Thousands of people have been through this, and the majority of them are not Staten Islanders.
Now people come here, not just from all over the island, all over the city, but from all over the world. They've come from Mexico, from Israel, from Japan, China, and Argentina, just to name a few of the countries, to see what we're doing with engineering and with stewardship and building a new park.
The wildlife in there is astonishing. There's a deer population on Staten Island now.
In terms of migratory birds alone, Fresh Kills is going to be an important pathway for birds. I think people who enjoy just being around nature are going to flock themselves to Fresh Kills.
So yeah, the birds of Fresh Kills, we've seen probably about 50 or 60 different species over the last 2 years of doing tours out here. You see that big white rump patch? That's a northern harrier. Northern harriers are actually marsh nesting birds. That is a turkey vulture. Do you see when it turns a little bit how it's holding its wings up in what we call a dihedral, or a V-shaped pattern?
Hey, bald eagle, that big bird right there. That darkish bird that's kind of just soaring around up there. Nice broad straight wings, whitish head.
Here's a look at a few of the many species of birds that have been recorded at Fresh Kills. The New York City Parks Department has twice held an open house of Fresh Kills, which they call Sneak Peek.
The site is not publicly open yet, but we wanted to have a special event where we could say to the public, come in, take a look at what the future holds. And people came in droves.
Visitors enjoyed a wide range of fun activities, including kite flying, sightseeing, art exhibits, a petting zoo, hiking, biking, and kayaking.
Seeing all the people walking in all this greenery, it's absolutely beautiful. It's very exciting.
I mean, the way they made it look beautiful.
I was amazed at the views. I didn't realize that you could get such a great vista from up at the top there.
I'm looking forward to go canoeing and bike riding and stuff like that. It looks like a farm, but without the houses and the crops.
Up there flying a kite,
Had a great view of Manhattan, actually.
But it's just beautiful. You can hear the birds, things that you would never expect from a garbage dump, which was closed.
And just walking the grounds, you never realize how large it really is.
It's a magnificent place. It's like the Serengeti Plains. When you get up there on a nice spring or summer day and the wind is blowing gently and the grasses are waving, you can't believe you're in New York City, let alone standing at the top of what was the most horrible place you'd ever want to be in the city 20 years ago.
I feel like the woman in The Sound of Music, where I want to run up the hill and start singing "The Hills Are Alive." I want to picnic here, I want to have fun here, I want to enjoy the summer and the falls.
We've had people actually kind of burst into tears because they can't believe that it's come back, this site has come back to something that's so beautiful.
50 years from now, this is the most beautiful park I've ever been in. What was all this business about a landfill?
Today, probably new people coming to the neighborhood probably don't realize what it is. It looks like a nice grassy hillside.
That's pretty. That's pretty. That's nice. Look, the mountain instead of dumping garbage. That's definitely worth living on Staten Island.
And grandfathers and grandmothers will talk to their grandkids and tell them what it was like when they were growing up on Staten Island. I think that's going to be the beauty of it.
I think it's wonderful that Staten Islanders are going to be able to see the day that it is not the largest landfill, but rather the largest park in their home borough.
Finally, we have community pride.
If you have the story of Fresh Kills, it's a real happy ending at the end.
I have a good feeling about the future of Staten Island, which is very promising right now, but it wouldn't have been but for the fact that we were able to close that dump.
It was a nightmare. The nightmare is over.
In the back of your mind, and you sort of use it for inspiration, that if little old Staten Island could come together and put the forces in play to end the Fresh Kills landfill, then we got a shot to win any of these battles that we're up against.
It's a great example of how you set an optimistic vision and you stick with it and you get it done.
What it does tell us is that Staten Islanders, if they unite, they can win on any issue, and they must unite.
The answer to this is you can fight City Hall, particularly when you have a City Hall like that listens, as Mayor Giuliani did in this case.
I consider the proudest achievements of my political career the ones that began this way. It cannot be done.
Should be a reminder of what you can do, no matter how awful something is, how you can change it, if you have the will and the passion to do it.